With no further ado, I'd like to invite Sam from MagicCube up on the stage. MagicCube is a startup tech vendor doing really interesting things in the journey from smart POS to no POS. But I'll let Sam explain it because it's really complicated.
So I'm going to stand behind the podium. I guess this is my tool here. Thanks again for having us. And I'm just going to start by asking a few simple questions. So how many people, by raise of hand, watch Netflix versus how many people buy DVDs? How many stream? All right. So how many people carry a real camera? The photographer is not allowed to respond to that, but how many carry a real camera? 1, 2. How many have a cell phone in their pocket? Everybody. So that's what we see as next pause. We actually see that, like everything else, the entire responsibility of doing a sophisticated application is going to gradually move from proprietary, legacy, expensive, hard to create, hard to ship, hard to maintain hardware into total software. And as we've seen over the past many years, your device, that cell phone, is actually more sophisticated, unfortunately, than some of the aviation equipment in the planes we use to fly across the Atlantic to come here. So the whole idea that the only device that can secure this acceptance process is that expensive, large, big, put your keyword there, to us seemed in need of a change. So we see next pause, as David said, no pause, whatever that means. So if you look at what we have here, we embarked on building this. Prior to starting MagicCube, I led global remote payments at Visa from their headquarters in Silicon Valley. And guilty, I helped in a lot of activities, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, including actually pin on glass, pin on mobile, whatever people are calling it these days. But the effort, in essence, was to start figuring out how do we move this difficult job from dedicated hardware to the smartphone, simply put. So for us to get there, our criteria was that we had to, it's really always between user experience and security. And it's hard to deliver both, as we all know, but our goal was to deliver both. So how do we create the right security and the right usability? We had to make sure that we're not using legacy hardware. We had to make sure we're not confusing the audience by changing the way they touch a keypad or the way they swipe or tap. We had to make sure that whatever we did, not just replaced the hardware, but made it for the banks, the acquirers, the merchant acquirers, the merchants themselves, a pleasant experience in terms of upgrade, update, over-the-air management. We wanted actually to get point-of-sale systems to where your mobile apps are. That everything is downloadable, everything is subscription-based, everything is deletable. So you can actually experience being a merchant for a day, a week, a month, without having to own or buy or maintain or ship or fix these pieces of hardware. So to us, we are only a security company. We're not a payments company. We just happen to pick one of the most difficult markets to help secure, and the jury's still out. Was this a good decision or a bad decision? We'll figure that out soon. So our core technology is what we call embedded security 2.0. In your pocket, in your credit card, there's a chip, the EMV chip. That's embedded security 1.0. That's 50 years old. 50 years old. And if we cannot disrupt this technology today, after 50 years of utilizing it beautifully, then I say we have an issue. So a SIM card, as you know, is nothing but a safe or a container or a device that hides secrets. It's just a vault. That vault has different shapes. SIM card is one. The chip inside the payment acceptance device, which secures the merchant keys and other things, is a larger form. The secure enclave that Apple uses to do Apple Pay is another form of that hardware. Even the HSM module that some of you know about that's sitting in the back end protecting keys is a very large safe. So what did we do? We virtualized that safe. something that scientists told us is impossible 4 years ago, we were able to create a virtual version of all these acronyms, SE, TPM, TEE, TEE. We were able to create that in a virtual container that is nothing but a simple file that gets compiled into your next release of an app. That means introducing it to the market is as easy as downloading Netflix on your tablet. No more, no less. And like a SIM card, there's a back-end system that manages that, like MDM, which is your carrier has. When phones came in the 90s, cell phones, we didn't have problems because the back end of the carrier ensured that nobody other than Vodafone can access your SIM card or can actually get to talk to your phone. Exactly the same concept. There's just the ingredients changed a little bit because of the abilities of modern day phones. So how does that affect us? How does that work? We hear a lot of things. We hear pin on glass, pin on mobile, slight confusion. We hear no pause, MPause, soft pause. All it is to us in MagicCube is that more responsibility is moving gradually and slowly from a dedicated device to a mobile device. So what you see in front of you here is how we do pin on mobile, pin on glass, pin on consumer device, whatever we call that. We literally give you a simple SDK, works with your current app. We put an appliance of sorts at the back end, all API-based, no special coding, no obfuscation, no white box encryption, none of that. And then we have multiple partners, including ID Tech, Datix, as well as Gertech in Brazil, that actually have prepared smaller readers that don't have keys, that don't have screens, to talk to us. This is the first part of evolution. As David was saying, there's a spec for that. That's called pin on COTS. It's a longer name, but it's pin on consumer off-the-shelf devices. So that's step number one. What's step number two? I think I mixed my slides. Let's go back. I don't remember this order. All right. So this is what I was supposed to be talking about. This is the evolution we think is happening. Hardware moves gradually to mobility, to an iZettle-like device, to a Square-like device, and then hopefully at the end of the day, it is your phone that has your camera, that has your Netflix. And that doesn't limit it to micro-immersions. It is actually, you can use these new technologies, like pin on mobile, pin on glass, tap and pin, to actually design a very different retail experience. We use some examples here that you can read through for large supermarkets, for cosmetics. This device actually exists, a huge point-of-sale system glued to a large touch screen. That can go away. We can actually display with the current technologies that we have that's been approved by multiple entities. We can reduce this to this level, where you have a great experience, where you get rid of payment lines, where you get rid of cash registers altogether. It's not just for the micro-merchant. A lot of people think it is. It is actually interesting. A lot of interest on the micro-merchant side who don't want to fiddle around with a device that has to be charged every 2 hours, that has issues with Bluetooth connectivity. I've seen it in taxis here every day. Large retailers can benefit from this. They can free space in the store. They can actually have a better experience showing customers alternatives and upselling and cross-selling from a large terminal. That looks like it's very expensive. It's not. It's not. It's just a screen and a display, and in it, you have a piece of software that secures it to a high level that would allow the networks to let us do this, which I'm going to talk about. So we talked about managing it. So what you've seen here is managed from afar. Because we've created this un-POS or un-chip or whatever you're going to call that, or a virtual chip for lack of a better word, because it's a smart object, I can talk to it remotely. I can suspend it, resume it, destroy it. I can tie it to my risk systems. I can monitor it. I can actually shut down devices and resume them at a click of a mouse. Unlike a hardware device, I can inject keys remotely. I can do over-the-air upgrades. The device can work offline and online. And then back to where we are delighted to say that after 4 years of building this, EMVCo, and again, refer to Dave, he said they are the counter-fraud party. Forget about PCI for a little bit. We deal with that too. But EMVCo deals with counterfeit. Their job is to make your instruments hard to counterfeit. EMVCo has very few standards. The EMV chip on your card, Pay, Wave, and others. We have been under test by EMVCo for 6 months with code reviews, source code, all the sacrifice you have to do to get there. And we're proud to say we're in the process of getting a certificate as a new standard called Virtual Trusted Execution Environment. What does that mean? A virtual EMV chip. So 50 years ago, there was a SIM card. Today, we have, my company was able to create a virtual version of it for real. Because this claim has been done before, and some people are jaded because they heard it before. This is proven in labs with reports, which is pretty exciting. What does this mean? I think this is what it means. Nothing disappears completely. We still have real cameras in the. I still have my old camera. My daughter steals it from time to time, but I still have access to it. But more and more things are going to move, not just to the phone, to just a smart device, whether it's a large screen a kiosk, whether it's a phone, a tablet, it's moving. And the rest of the intelligence can be in the cloud, can be on a companion device, but these old devices with gold mesh protecting the keys and all this sophistication, we think it's their time to go. And we talked about high-scale retailers. This is a little bit about who is, because we're a nobody. We're a Silicon Valley small startup, as I was introduced, but we're very well backed by a lot of entities as our supporters. The team comes from Apple, Xilinx, Intel, Visa, and multiple other places. So we all have products that you guys have used before, hence the credibility of what we're offering. And if I still have time, I just have to brag. I'm an American, I have to brag a little bit. So we achieved this Cool Vendor of the Year from Gartner. I don't know how much is that worth. The key here is the impact of EMVCo, looking at this as a security standard. They created a new category called SM something, terrible acronyms, software-based mobile security. Under that, there's a new item called TEE, Trusted Execution Environment, a term previously reserved for hardware. That's where we have our certification coming up soon. So with that, if Philip can play the video, it's a short 2 minutes video. Unfortunately, you're gonna hear my voice again, which is terrible, but it's better than doing a real demo on stage. So can we run the video? Maybe not. So in that video, I'm just gonna share with you a live demo of what we have. It's really short. You guys are gonna get it right away, and then we'll relinquish the rest of the time to the panel.
Maybe I can ask a question while we're still waiting.
Sure, sure.
Can you tell us?
Hi,
Here it
this is a quick demo of the pen and glass solution from MagicCube.
Oh, that was going well.
No, show the video. The question can wait. All right, I'll ask the question.
Go for it.
Can you tell us a bit about who your customers are?
Hi, this is a quick demo of the pen and glass.
Let's watch the
solution
video and then
from
I'll
MagicCube.
respond. Okay.
What we have here is a Samsung Galaxy.
So our customers is anybody who is Nexi was talking about the digital revolution. This is a system you can own end to end. It's pure software, and it's a full system from the management back end to the acceptance piece on the phone to PIN acceptance with PIN, without PIN, with a reader, without a reader, on a regular phone, iOS, Android, a smart car. It's really agnostic. The only thing we cannot do is Windows, so because we decided not to. But anything Linux or Unix based, you can own the entire system. There's no hardware to buy from anybody. If you decide to own it, that's fine. If you're a hardware vendor, I would bet some of my roadmap on software. That's what happened when we did VoIP. Carriers pushed, then everybody adopted VoIP. Same thing, streaming versus DVDs. It's the same thing. So merchant aggregators, acquiring banks, processors, and people who didn't previously, were not able to get into the business because of the cost, they can now do that. So let's play it, please, louder if you can.
Hi, this is a quick demo of the pen and glass solution from MagicCube. What we have here is a Samsung Galaxy S9, which represents a consumer off-the-shelf device, which means any device you can actually buy off the shelf. We also have a reader, a card reader from our partners at ID Tech. This specific reader is ready for PIN, and it's also MagicCube enabled. And here we have a test card to run the transaction with. So we launch our reference app here, which contains our SDK that protects the process of capturing and transmitting the PIN back to the reader. And it's fully software enabled. It doesn't really depend on the underlying operating system or hardware. It's just self-contained. And let's buy an item here and try to process the payment, see what happens. We will actually now insert the card as required for the PIN to be read. And as you can see, immediately our protected screen popped up. And this screen, as I mentioned, is self-contained inside our SDK and separate from the underlying operating system. It's also monitored remotely by our remote attestation service and our mini cloud, which does remote attestation and monitors the transaction as it's processed. It also links the whole system to your backend and to your risk management system. So let's enter the PIN as designated on the card, and let's confirm that. And we're now seeing the actual PIN being approved and transaction has been concluded. Now, for a different flavor, which actually will be more prevalent in countries where contactless is more readily available, let's do this totally without hardware. So for this, we'll buy the same item and we'll use this contactless enabled card and we'll process the payment in the same manner. In this case, we're just gonna basically tap the card instead of dipping it. No hardware required other than your phone, which you have on you anyway. And then let's enter the transaction. And as you can see here, the transaction is confirmed, no reader required. So this can be a downloadable app that people can subscribe to. They can pay it monthly. They don't need to buy specific hardware. They run it on their phone and they can be merchant for a year or for a minute. It doesn't matter. So other things that MagicCube can do all has to do with connected payments, connected security, connected cards, identity. And for more information on what MagicCube offers for security, please visit our website at www.magiccube.co. Thank you.
So one comment before I leave the stage, you probably have noticed we don't have to scramble the keys. There are some technologies out there that moves the keys around to confuse the attacker. When I was at Visa, we ran 6 months of user experience, and people just almost broke their phones when you did that to them. Everybody has the muscle memory, unfortunately. They're used to typing the PIN the way they do. So we had to reach a higher level of security to be able to be tested and survive the test without having to try to confuse the reader. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.